In the lesson part, we have seen how puppets came into origin, and in the fun with the grammar part, we have seen some grammar portions also. Now we have to get on to the activity part, which is totally based on the language skills of reading, listening, writing, and speaking. Okay, because English is basically a language, and we have to learn language for the purpose of language. English, like Telugu or Hindi, should not be used or learned like we learn maths or science or social sciences. It's not just a group of new words or word meanings or question answers or grammar. Language has to be used. Okay. So this part of the textbook is actually based on this particular purpose of improving our language skills. Right? English has four language skills: reading, listening, writing, and speaking. Okay. So when we practice this thoroughly, we will learn how to speak in English, how to listen in English, how to write in English, and how to read English textbooks and other materials written in English. Okay. So in this part, we have a reading passage. So the passage will come now, and you will listen to the passage first. I will read it again, and then I will give you the chance to read the passage yourself. Okay?
A puppet is a figure or doll usually made to look like a person or an animal. Puppets are controlled by people. Some puppets fit over the hand or a finger, while some have strings or rods that are used to move them. Puppets are usually meant for telling stories. The person who operates puppets is called a puppeteer. Puppetry is an old and traditional art which is still used in almost every culture in different parts of the world. In India, puppets are mostly used to tell stories of gods and heroes. In some part of the world, they were used in religious ceremonies and for rituals. String puppets were popular in European courts and places of Venice. Shadow puppets probably started in China. Years ago, the Chinese puppets were made of donkey, sheep, water buffalo, or fish skin. Puppets were used by Americans, Greeks, and Africans too. These days, puppets are mainly used for entertaining children or for teaching purposes. Nowadays, the different kinds of puppets are there: robotic puppets, Japanese red puppets, glove puppets, hand puppets, costume body puppets, and so on.
Okay, children. So have you listened to this? Okay. Now I will read this passage once again, and then I will let you read the passage. Okay. A puppet is a figure or doll usually made to look like a person or an animal. Puppets are controlled by people. Some puppets fit over the hand or a finger, while some have strings or rods that are used to move them. Puppets are usually meant for telling stories. The person who operates a puppet is called a puppeteer. A puppeteer. Puppetry is an old and traditional art which is still used in almost every culture in different parts of the world. In India, puppets are mostly used to tell stories of gods and heroes. In some parts of the world, they were used in religious ceremonies and for rituals. String puppets were popular in European courts and palaces of Venice. Shadow puppets probably started in China. Years ago, the Chinese puppets were made of donkey, sheep, water buffalo, or fish skin. Puppets were used by Americans, Greeks, and Africans too. These days, puppets are mainly used for entertaining children or for teaching purposes. Nowadays, the different kinds of puppets are there, like robotic puppets, Japanese red puppets, glove puppets, hand puppets, costume body puppets, and so on. So the passage is all about the puppets. Okay, puppets are dolls or small figures. They are controlled by human beings, people. Some puppets are made to fit in the hand. Some are made to fit in the hand, the fingers, and some are controlled using threads and rods. So the person who controls this puppet is called a puppeteer, and the art of using puppets for telling stories are called a puppetry. It's an old and a traditional art. It is still found in very many cultures around the world. Okay, we can see puppetry in different forms in different parts of the world. In India, basically puppets are used to tell the stories of gods and heroes. Heroes means warrior heroes. Okay. Now, in some regions, they are used in religious purposes also. Okay. String puppets were popular. String puppets means puppets which were controlled using small strings and threads. They were very famous in Europe and in the palaces of Venice. Venice is a region in Italy. Shadow puppets, as we saw that in the lesson, the shadow of the puppet is made on a screen. So such kind of puppetry was started in China. Okay, so in the olden days, the Chinese people used different kinds of animal skins, like the skin of a donkey, skin of a sheep, or a skin of a water buffalo, or even some fish skins were used to make these puppets. It was used by different people, like Americans used it, Greek used it, Africans used it. So now, in the olden days, it was basically a form of entertainment because there were no movies, there were no TVs. So the people enjoyed puppetry a lot. But now, it is basically for entertaining children, not for the elders. And some puppets are used for teaching purposes also. Okay, and nowadays there are different kinds of puppets, like robotic puppets are there. Another type is called the Japanese red puppets. Then a glove puppet, which is made to fit inside in the hand puppets, costume body puppets. So there are different types of puppets like that. Okay, so this is the passage all about, and now I will give you some time for you to go through this particular passage. Read this passage. Read it loud. Okay. Okay, children. So now we will go on to answer some of the questions from this passage. So the first question is, what do puppets look like? Usually look like. What do puppets usually look like? And what is the answer? Yes, a puppet usually look like a person or an animal. Okay, so what does a puppet usually look like? Puppets look like a person or an animal. Now, who is a puppeteer? Who is a puppeteer? Who is called a puppeteer? A person who operates puppets is called a puppeteer. So, a person who controls the puppet is called a puppeteer, right? Third question. What are puppets usually meant for? Means what are puppets usually made for? Puppets are usually meant for telling stories. Okay. So in the olden days, puppets were usually used for telling different stories. We said even in India, we used to tell the stories of gods and heroes, isn't it? Yeah. So puppets are usually meant for telling stories, right? So what kind of stories are mostly told with the help of puppets in India? Oh. So why did we use puppets in India? So we saw puppets were used for telling stories. Now we need to tell what kind of stories were told using puppets in India. So what kind of stories were told in India? Puppets were mostly used to tell the stories of gods and heroes. So in India, puppetry was basically for the purpose of telling stories of gods and heroes. Okay. Where were the string puppets very popular? String puppets we told, na? Yeah, puppets which is controlled by threads and sticks. String puppets were popular in European courts and palaces of Venice. So where were the string puppets very popular? String puppets were very popular in European courts and palaces of Venice. Venice is a place in Italy. We told it, yeah. Where were shadow puppets first used? Where were shadow puppets first used? In China. Shadow puppets were first used in China. So where were shadow puppets first used? Shadow puppets were first used in China. Next question. What was used to make Chinese puppets years ago? So we saw how Chinese people made puppets also, na? Yes. What were used? Years ago, the Chinese puppets were made of donkey, sheep, water buffalo or fish skin. So years ago, the Chinese people used the skin of donkey, sheep, water buffalo or a fish to make the puppets. Okay. Name any three kinds of puppets used these days. So what are the different kinds of puppets that we have nowadays? Robotic puppets, Japanese red puppets, glove puppets. We can say hand puppets or the costume body puppets also. Okay. So robotic puppets, Japanese red puppets, glove puppets are a few kinds of puppets used these days. So we learned some new things also about puppets. Okay. Let's practice is the second one.